This is a very pink Squier Bullet Strat on the bench today. It plays well, but one simple upgrade will dramatically improve the tone. If we replace this plastic nut, it's one of the best upgrades we could do to this guitar.
I agree with Paul. I got some replacements right here. We got a lot of different nut blanks at StewMac. Some are plastic, some are bone, some are tusks. Our favorites would be bone and tusk because of the tone. My little test is just to hear how it sounds on a hard surface. Here's a plastic nut. It's kind of plinky. Now here's tusk. To me, it's a bright, glassy sound. Whoa, that's beautiful. The bounce is energy. That's going to make that string vibrate more. Now here's a bone. A bright, glassy sound with a softer edge to it. What are you going to use on this one?
I think I'm going to go with the TUSQ XL. It's hard like bone, but it's got Teflon in it, so the strings slide over it when you use the tremolo or bend the strings. I use these to save time when I can because the shaping's already done. This is something you can install yourself. It's probably the easiest way to replace a nut. So first I'm going to use a ruler and measure the string spread. With the strings on for a little bit more accuracy, I'm getting about 1 in 11/32. That's just less than 1 3/8. And then I'm going to take the strings off to measure the nut width. So the original nut here is about 1 5/8 inch wide. Before you choose a replacement nut, this is how you know if it's going to fit your guitar. We have pictures with dimensions for each nut at StewMac.com. I'm going to take the nut out now. This one came out with little to no resistance, very clean, which is always really nice to deal with. But other guitars have different problems to consider when you're taking the nut out. They can be lacquered in on the sides and you have to spend a lot of time cutting it cleanly and digging it out. Or sometimes it can be so stubborn you've got to cut through the top with a saw and collapse it on itself. Now that the nut's out, the first thing to do is to clean up any glue from the slot. In this case, there was hardly any. Put your nut in the slot, roughly on center. Put on the 2 outside E strings to check for height. At first you can just do this by eye to see if you need to remove any material from the bottom of the nut. In this case, I can clearly see it's too high. Mark the amount you think you need to remove on the bottom of the nut. You want this to be a little bit smaller than the amount you actually think needs to be removed, because you don't want to remove too much too fast and be stuck. Sand the nut bottom on 220 and 320 grit sandpaper. Now that we've removed material from the bottom of the nut, we can recheck the height. Put it in the nut slot, put your 2 E strings back on. I like to use a bent guitar string to measure the action over the first fret. That's a good indication that you got your nut right about the same height you're looking for. We're looking good here.
So the nut and the nut slot on that Stratocaster was a flat bottom radius. That's not typical of American-made Fenders like this Telecaster. This nut slot has a round bottom, just like the fretboard. So if you have a neck like this with a round slotted bottom, you're going to have to fit whatever your blank is to that. I'll take this as an example. You're going to cut some sandpaper into a strip, go up on one of the taller frets where it's wide, and sanding crosswise on the fretboard, use the radius of the board to shape the bottom of the nut. I might do that twice, once on that 120 and once on 220, till it presses right in.
With the 2 strings on, feel for any overhang on the nut on the bass and treble side. In this case, it lines up perfectly on the bass side, so we just need to remove material from the treble side. You can use a file or just sand this off like I am here and round the nut ends a little bit. So we have the length within a few thousandths because the polishing will get the rest of it exactly to size. Once I did that, I double checked the string radius at the bridge to be sure it would match the fretboard radius. And it was spot on, so we were good there. Now we're gonna roll this edge on the side of the nut. That can be really sharp and kind of dig into your hand. We're just gonna smooth that out. So we just have a small piece of 400 grit paper. So we're gonna get the ends and kind of roll it inward a little bit. Knock those rough corners down. And then you're just gonna check it with your thumb. All right, that should be nice and comfortable. Now we're gonna do our final polishing and buffing. This is a micro mesh touch-up stick. It has 1, 2, 3 grits of micro mesh on it. And that'll get us to a real nice shine. So we're just gonna lightly take this and just hit those corners again just to finalize them. Hit the top a little bit. And then this is why I didn't take the ends in all the way. This little bit of polishing is going to take a few thousandths off, and you don't want to be too short. Now to the next grit. Just a couple more swipes on the end to make sure those are nice and clean. And that should do it. I like to cut the tip off of a toothpick. You don't need to do it, but I like the extra surface area to get glue onto. And then you just take your glue, just put a little dab on there. One drop towards the edge, one drop in the center roughly, and one drop towards this end. Now you set your nut in there, and line it up to where you want it. And it's a little slick because the glue's in there. So you just want to hold it in place while you tighten your strings. You don't want to tune the pitch right now, just enough tension to hold the nut in place. It acts as a clamp in this situation. Now you give it 30 minutes to an hour and you're good to go. Certainly better than before.
It is, that's TUSQ. It's got that bright sound of when I dropped those blanks on the granite and it bounced up.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a nutty lesson, man, and a good one. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Dan.
By the way, if you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get these trade secret tips every other week.